right. I think we'll get this webinar started. Hello, everyone. My name is Tony Jolly. I'm a rental associate here at Rayco Rents. And I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today. Today for our presenter, we have Bob Namdar from TSI, and he's going to dive into the South Coast Air Quality Management District, Rule 1466. Today he'll cover the history behind Rule 1466, understanding the evolution and significance of air quality management. He'll explore the latest updates and amendments, and then we'll take a look at effective strategies for air quality monitoring along with proper equipment to ensure compliance. Bob supports the Health and Safety Division at TSI, covering the Southern California and Hawaii regions. Some areas of specialization include indoor air quality, environmental air quality, respiratory fit testing, heat stress, and noise monitoring. Bob worked with the South Coast Air Quality Management District on the implementation and amendments to Rule 1466, and he is currently serving on the OCAIHA board as Professional Development Director and Vendor Director for the Joint Technical Symposium. Since we have a large number of attendees, everyone will be muted. We do have a chat box that you can use to ask any questions or leave any comments, and we'll be sure to try to answer all the questions we can at the end of the presentation today. About 1 or 2 hours after the webinar, everyone will receive a certificate of attendance along with a recording of the webinar. And if you don't receive this, feel free to contact us and we'll make sure to send that to you as soon as possible. The webinar is also going to be posted on our website for you to view at any time. You can find this underneath the Training Center tab. So at this time, I'm going to turn over the mic to Bob and let him take the lead. Thank you and welcome, Bob.
Great. Thank you so much, Tony. Appreciate it. Good to be here today, and thanks for that introduction. So I'll go ahead and get started here. Give everyone a couple minutes. As Tony mentioned, we'll definitely take a look at the questions at the end of the presentation here, but go ahead and get started talking about Rule 1466. So Rule 1466 comes from the South Coast Air Quality Management District. We'll go ahead and get started here with the agenda here, just a brief introduction of the rule, background on Rule 1466, and then talking about some of the requirements and some of the ways that TSI can help with Rayco as well. We'll have that Q&A at the end. So who is TSI? I'll get started here briefly. As Tony mentioned, some of the background here. I cover California here for the region of health and safety for TSI. So TSI is a particle research company based in Minnesota. Our expertise is in aerosol research, precision measurement instruments. And so one of the areas that we concentrate on is dust and aerosols and outdoor, as well as indoor monitoring as well. So as you can see, we've got 25 technology licenses, 50 patents, global company with offices based here in the United States in Shoreview, Minnesota, but also offices around the world here. So let's get started here talking a little bit about South Coast Air Quality Management District. I know it's a mouthful, so they actually allow you to just call them South Coast or South Coast AQMD. But this is the local pollution control agency, and it's based in California in LA County, and it covers a large region here: Orange County, portions of LA, San Bernardino, and Riverside County, encompassing over 10,000 square miles with 17 million people, 11 million vehicles in its footprint. So very large area. I would say it's one of the biggest districts, definitely the biggest district in California, but probably one of the biggest in the whole country, if not the whole world. So one of their main responsibilities is controlling emissions from stationary sources, monitoring air quality to meet federal and state air quality standards, and they do a lot of permitting and inspecting as well for businesses. So this is kind of a little bit of the background on South Coast. South Coast came out with the Rule 1466. I want to say it was about 2017, and TSI was instrumental, or a partner in developing the rule. And what this rule is really concentrating on are cleanup sites, or sites that have toxic soils or contaminants. So how is a site designated as one of these sites? It comes from either the US EPA, DTSC in California, or regional or state water quality control boards. That's who's going to designate the actual site to state whether it falls under the Rule 1466. But we also have county, local, state regulatory agencies that can do that as well, or an executive officer can identify a site. So there are sites throughout, big and small, large, Superfund sites, small, sites that could be considered to fall under the rule. So it's important to know that it's not just one type of site. There are many different ones throughout the region here. What the rule does is it establishes requirements to minimize off-site fugitive dust emissions that contain certain toxic air contaminants during the earth-moving activities. So the rule is triggered when there's an excavation, remediation, some type of cleanup, that the soils are moving and generating dust or aerosols that could then leave the site and go into the community. So the requirements are intended to be incorporated in the agency's cleanup plans. So if you're designated with one of these sites, it's got to be in your plan. That'll get approved by an agency. And from there, there's also additional health protection from the toxic particulate emissions while not impeding on the activities. So we've got the actual rule language itself there in the presentation, so we'll definitely send that out to everyone as well. So here's a little bit more about the background here, about the rule. This is where the rule limits, the PM10 limits are. So what we're talking about here with the rule is it's really governing PM10. So we're not looking at PM 2.5 or respirable dust. We're looking at PM10 level dust that can come from earth moving activities, from a construction site, from an area where there's excavation going on. That's the level of dust size that we want to, that the district is trying to cut down on leaving the site. So here's a little bit about the rule itself. Kind of restating what we had there earlier. So the current requirements call for PM monitoring, PM10 monitoring, and it's using two monitors on opposite corners of a site. And this is what we have pictured here. You would have it on an upwind and then one on a downwind area of the site to account for the dust leaving the property line. So you want to be able to show that there's dust, there's natural occurring particulates in the air, and you want to be able to show that there's no site contribution of the dust leaving going out into the community, and that whatever dust is out there, could be naturally occurring, but the measures are being taken to keep the dust from the particular site enclosed. So this is the reason for having two monitors, one measuring the upwind and one the downwind, or one located on the upwind and downwind of the site. Dust control measures. So let's say you do have a exceedance of the dust, you have to do some suppressants. So you have to either use water, wet down the areas, install fencing at a certain height, and from there cleaning the soil, from the vehicles that are leaving. So there's a couple different methods for mitigating the dust that's leaving the site. Covering the site, as you can see here in 2A, keeping the dust covered. And I know that fence line, if you've got a dust, you have an area of soil that is piled up, the fence line has to be higher than that. So it's 6 feet here, at least 6 feet tall, but if your pile of soil is taller than that, then your fence line would have to be taller as well. So as you can see here, there are some additional measures taken when close to places like schools or athletic sites as well. So notification, signage, and record keeping. This I see a lot more and more as I travel around the area. You know, you have signs that are very noticeable and legible, indicating where to go if you do see dust leaving a site, and it has a phone number of a project manager there. So there's specific parameters that you have to take and meet for your signage. And also from there, your record keeping. So logging your records, your readings, maintaining those records for at least 3 years is all part of the rule. And, you know, if there is an exceedance with the earth moving activities, documenting that, because that is what potential inspector could come out and ask for and demand if they do visit a site. So that's very important. So here's a little graphic here regarding your installing of your PM10 monitors. You've got the earth moving activity here at the center. You've got your fencing all along the site. And then from there, you're installing your 1 PM monitor upwind and 1 downwind. And the monitors shall be placed in, you know, it is based on the prevailing wind direction. That's important to know what the prevailing wind is. In addition to this, for the weather, wind, speed, and direction, it is important to have your weather station enabled as well with the device, because that's going to really let you know where is the upwind and downwind. So that is also a component to this when you're using your PM10 monitor. So we'll get into the monitoring requirements. We've got the installation of PM10 monitors, conducting your PM10 monitoring, and then calculating your PM10 concentration. So these are components to the monitoring requirement here for the rule. So South Coast AQMD has made some minimum requirements. They demand some minimum specifications for PM10 monitoring, and this is what they look like. So an omnidirectional heated sampler inlet. This is important for moisture or humidity, because moisture and humidity getting into the PM10 monitor can actually look like dust or higher levels of dust and particulate. The district has asked for a heated sampler inlet to be added on to the configuration. The device that they would like would have to have a sample pump and a volumetric flow controller. So these are minimum requirements that they require. An enclosure. So if the device is, they want to make sure it's protected, that it's out there in the field and the construction site, it's got to be inside of an enclosure. And then the last one here is a data logger capable of logging each data point with average concentration, time, date, and data point number. So these are the minimum requirements for your PM10 monitor. And then they've also laid out some minimum performance standards. So this is the range here for the monitor to be able to read. They've asked for accuracy or precision as well, plus or minus 5%. Resolution here, 1 micron here per cubic meter. And then the measurement cycle. So being able to select your cycle here, if there's a 30-minute or 2-hour cycle, having that ability to set those is required. So TSI does have a device that can meet the standard, if not exceed the standards. So we'll definitely get into that on the equipment portion of the talk here. So and TSI's devices are on the pre-approved list for Southwest AQMD for Rule 1466. So when conducting your PM10 monitoring, it's important to make sure that the monitors are identical. So it's for monitoring, it's a little different than, let's say, doing some gas analysis where you do a bump test. You compare the gas monitor to a cylinder of gas to make sure that it's reading the right levels. Or if you're calibrating a noise dosimeter, you would hook it up to a calibrator to check its reading and make sure that it's within range. So PM10 monitors, one thing that South Coast has brought in with its new amendments is to make sure that the device is calibrated, factory calibrated, but also reading within a certain plus or minus to another PM10 device. So there is a component to that as well. So the device itself would collect the PM10 data and then push that out to a data acquisition system. So this is, a telemetry option that they're asking for, being able to log every 10 minutes or less. So typically they ask for like a 1 minute average, but they're kind of vague on the exact requirement there. That heated inlet sampler, that's something they require for all the monitors as well, to make sure that humidity does not affect the result. From there, you calculate your PM10 average. So they did change the average. It was previously a 2-hour average. And so it was a little bit confusing because do we always start at the top of every hour? Is it an hour? Like if we start at 8:01 to 10:01. So what they've done is change that to a 120-minute rolling average. So whenever you start, it's just 120 minutes after that is where your averages will be taking place. So that is to basically reflect the DS capabilities, and you can start your moving activities anytime as opposed to that top of the hour that was there before. They also removed the absolute difference, instead calculating by subtracting the results of the upwind and downwind monitors. So this was because there would be different directions of the wind, that would affect the difference. So they've changed that to so it's not as confusing when you're calculating the differential. Another new amendment that they've come out with is now you can redesignate your upwind and downwind monitors. So if we do get a change in the direction and it's plus or minus 90 degrees, you have the ability to reassign your upwind and downwind. Chances are it's not going to happen all the time, but it can happen. Prevailing winds usually go the same direction, but if you do have that situation, you do have the ability to be able to redesignate that. And so with a telemetry option, that could be possible to do remotely as well. So in the event of data logging or PM10 calculation failure due to technical issue beyond the reasonable control of owner operator, this is internet connection or disruption, computer malfunction, the new amendment allows you to restore as soon as possible, or manually record the data and be able to go about and collect data until your connection is restored. So a couple of different components there. So this here gives you an example of kind of the differential that you'll see when the wind changes direction. Now we have the record keeping requirements. So this is important. I mean, data is great. It's always good to use instruments and monitor, but at the end of the day, you need to have your records and be able to produce those if asked by an inspector. So there is some additional record keeping provisions that were added on. And those kind of relate to more of the stockpiles and the, any kind of repairs that need to be done or maintenance of your labels. So they also clarified the types of data needed to ensure enforceability of new and existing rule provisions. So they did add on the PM10 data, the rolling average, the wind data were all added on as well. So those were, and within the rule and the new amendments, they were clarified and just made it a little bit easier to understand. Yeah, the one thing as well, as I mentioned, calibrating to the devices, to your second device. So there is a intra-instrument precision test that you would do. So doing that test, you want to make sure you have the data that backs that up. Typically, if you're renting the equipment, that type of test would be done, where you are picking up the equipment from. But any kind of test that you do for that, you'd want to store that record to be able to produce in case that's asked for. Yeah, now we'll switch gears here to the monitors themselves. So I kept talking about the PM10 monitor, the TSI. This is called the Death Shack. And so we do have Rule 1466 specific part number available. That's pictured here. We've got a PM10 only device, and then we've got a PM10 or all size fraction device. This is known as our DRX model. That's the 8533-1466. So this will do PM10 in addition to your PM10, PM2.5, rest interval, PM1, and total dust levels all in one. So it's essentially like having 4 different devices built in one. But if your main concern is just PM10, that would be the 8530-1466. And to my understanding, these would both be available from Rico as well. So how do you plan to use your monitor? You know, these are kind of ways to determine which model you would want to go with. So if you're using your monitor indoors and outdoors, you want to be able to have a small footprint or be able to walk around with the device. You know, you're in the right lane with the 8533 and 8530. If you're only going to use the model for Rule 1466, you have no need to look at any other size fraction. You would go with the 8530. If you do maybe want to align with another rule at the same time, maybe there's another requirement that you have to monitor for PM 2.5 as well as PM10, you would go with the 8533-1466. Or let's say, you know, you've got this device and you want to also be able to use it for like an indoor air quality study. The device can be removed from its enclosure, the pelican case pictured here, and taken out and used for your indoor air quality studies. So you've got a little bit more flexibility here with the 8533, and there is some added value. Just to touch on, TSI does have another option as well, the dedicated environmental unit. So if there is just a need for having a monitor, fence line monitoring 24 hours a day, 365, you know, the dedicated environmental unit would be an option as well. But we do also have our flexible multi-use option here, the 8530. So just to touch upon a little bit about power systems. So battery power is available. It's probably our more popular option to be able to power the unit. AC power is also an option if that's available. You know, some sites would have that, some sites do not. The solar power option is a very good option here that's available. So if you want to just have your site set up, you don't want to have to send somebody to the site, you know, every day or every other day. You know, solar is a great option because it'll just be powered all day long, and you can be able to collect your data offsite. So that's basically built for that short-term or long-term portability. Mounting the device. So with the current model here pictured, the tripod is going to be the main option. You know, if you do need it to be raised, you know, you would probably have to build something to be able to get it onto the higher end, or, you know, on the fence line. But the pole mount option we do have is for that dedicated environmental unit, the Shack Environmental. Giving you a little bit more of a breakdown of what isn't actually inside of the case. So I guess at this point we can open up to any questions. Presentation for now.
Okay, so we do have a few questions here. First one, does above ground mining fall under this rule 1466?
So yeah, I mean, above ground mining is a great question. You know, in my earth moving activities is a very broad term. So if we're moving the earth, it could potentially be fall along with this, but the main thing is to understand what region we're in. So for Rule 1466, we have to look at that this is established within this Los Angeles, Orange, Riverside, San Bernardino County. But the way it's stated as earth moving activity, so if there's any kind of excavation, digging, remediating, those would fall under the earth moving activities of the rule.
And we have another question. Is the 25 micrograms per cubic meter standard applied after the background dust concentration is subtracted?
Yeah, so the 25 is basically the differential between the upwind and downwind monitor. So you would take your upwind monitor, see what the concentration is, subtract it from the downwind. And so that's why there's a need for having two monitors, as it will differentiate and take the average of both within 120 minutes and give you the total difference. And that's where you get your 25 microgram per cubic meter to see if you're exceeding that level by doing a comparison of the two monitors.
So some people can express concerns about only one downwind monitoring station. Seems like there's been instances where people have multiple stations downwind at a time. Do you see any issues with data capture in terms of only having one station downwind?
Yeah, that's a good point. And it was during the amendment process, it was brought up, like maybe we should have four monitors, on all sides just to cover all the bases. And it was determined that two monitors, and it was actually taken into consideration, that two monitors would be sufficient to be able to capture that dust, as long as you have that wind data. That's why it's important to have both the PM10, but also the wind and speed and direction data included as well. But these are the minimum requirements. So, if you feel more comfortable having more than one, I mean, there's definitely an option available. I've had sites that do have four on it and are just covering all their bases, but the minimum requirement would be two.
And last question for now, does the 120-minute rolling average rule mean monitoring must start 2 hours prior to field activities?
The 120-minute, so it actually starts right when you start, the rolling average starts right when you begin the earth moving activity. So as far as I know, that was the big difference, because previously you would have to wait for the top of the hour to start your monitoring and start your work. So now it can actually start with the 120-minute clock starts when the earth moving activities begin.
Okay.
And yeah, now there's a lot more capability.
Yeah, that is currently the questions that we have at the moment.
Great. Skip ahead here.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll give it a couple of more seconds here, but there's my contact info. If there's any questions you'd like to take offline, feel free to give me a call or shoot me an email. But that's my presentation for today. I hope everyone got a little bit more information about the rule, about the requirements, and how TSI or RACO can help with that PM10 monitoring.
Yep. So as we're concluding here, questions are still rolling on here. So do you know if there are any other regions currently considering implementing similar rules?
That's a great question. Yes. So we've seen it kind of spreading. So like we saw 2017, this is where it was, just in California, Southern California. We had COVID in between that, so maybe it would have spread a little bit faster, but we are starting to see similar requirements in places like New York, I want to say Washington State, the Bay Area of California, just to name a few, but you're starting to see them more and more within these requirements that you'll get from state, county, public health. So they're starting to put this more into the rules. So I would say South Coast kind of is more of a pioneer in different rules, and this is just one of many rules that they have for the district. And so you can see a lot of those start to get into other regions.
In order to comply with the Rule 1466, is there a minimum sample runtime that needs to be met in terms of hours, days, weeks?
Minimum runtime for the rule, that's a good question. So are you talking about the device itself or the site itself?
Either or. If it needs to be a specific device or if it needs to be all of them combined on the same site.
Yeah, no, so there is the precision test that you would do prior to using the device. So that's just making sure that it's calibrated, and also you want to make sure that the two devices you're using, or let's say you're using four, that they're all reading close to each other. So if you're going in and renting two devices, you'll probably want to try to run them together, make sure that they're running close to each other. And there's a standard within the rule of like a plus or minus percentage. So having that run close to each other is going to be the best way, is what the district actually prefers that you do.
So Rego Rents does provide a internet-based data capturing device. It's called the Themis 1000. The manufacturer is through Netronix, and the site is environet.io. From there, Rego Rents is able to select organizers and give access to the users, in which they can see on a dashboard a whole variety of parameters that's being live recorded. And you're able to select which ones you want to be seeing at that moment. It can range from anything from the PM peaks, averages, minimums and maximums. Gives you a wide variety of what you're able to see on that dashboard. Once again, that's called the Themis 1000.
Right.
Here. And within that software, you're able to export all that data into an Excel file, similarly in the way that you would just straight off the dust track. So when you're recording and using the Themis in tandem with the dust track, both locations are going to be storing the data. So if you don't have access to either the dust track in person, or if you're not able to get good internet connection on the environet.io, both locations are going to be saving that data. The unit is communicating directly with each other. You'll know the GPS location of where that device is, what time it started, and what time it finished. You'll be able to see pretty much everything that ever changes to that device. You can set alarms. I believe that's either a mobile text or an email alert. So you would need to have that on you. I don't believe there is, correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, but I'm not sure if there is an alarm setting on the dust track itself.
There are alarms that you can set on the dust track itself, yes. So that's an important component, having the alarm go off or an alert go off when you have exceeded within the rule, because that's where you'll know that you've got to use more water, you've got to stop work, mitigate the dust, take another reading again, and then continue work. So that was some of the record keeping that you would have to do with your reports, is showing when you have an exceedance and when that exceedance was brought down again, and then when you continue your work. So that kind of made a big adjustment with the 120-minute change because yeah, imagine 8:01, you had an exceedance, you got the dust down. 5-10 minutes later, you want to start monitoring. You have to wait for the top of the hour again. So that little change kind of made a big difference.
Yeah, and if you need a device that's able to pick up wind direction, temperature, and humidity, that is possible to also add into a kit like you see on the screen right now. It's able to communicate with the Themis. It is a separate device, so if you just get the dust track, the heated inlet, auto zero module, and the Themis, you would need to add on another weather station in order to capture all that data. That also goes straight into EnviroNet, so you'll be able to see all the PM levels that the dust track's picking up, along with all of the temperature, humidity, wind direction, speed that the weather station is picking up at the same time. So it is possible, just an additional piece of equipment that you need to add to it.
Right.
Okay, so it seems to be just about all the questions we've had here. If we didn't get to your question, we'll be sure to answer that directly through email. Bob, really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to give us this presentation. Really appreciate it. If you have any specific questions on the South Coast Air Quality Management District or Rule 1466, feel free to contact Bob. Any specific questions in regards to equipment, you can always call Rayco Rents. Our number is 866-RENT-EHS or 866-736-8347. We also have a training center with tons of videos demonstrating equipment operation. We have past webinars, and we also have blog posts for educational content. Highly recommend checking that out. Appreciate everyone for attending today's webinar, and hope to see you all at the next one. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Tony. Appreciate it. Thank everyone for joining in.
Thank you, Bob.